Chapter 572. Although this little girl is clever, in a place like Xianghe Palace, all her advantages can't compare to a finger of others. She has to do the lowest work quietly. As for having this consort accompany His Majesty in the imperial study, it must be Nanny Deng's idea. Find the most inconspicuous maidservant in Xianghe Palace to pass the message to this consort. At that time, even if the matter is exposed, you can shirk all responsibility. Not only will the emperor not be suspicious, but even I myself will not be able to help but wonder if I have wronged the empress. Did I believe the words of others and feel that I have wronged the empress? What are you saying, imperial consort? Why can't this consort understand? This maidservant was tortured to this state by you. Even if she was in good condition, this consort wouldn't recognize her. Just as imperial consort said, someone deliberately framed this consort. How did you? She was tortured because she was disobedient and stubborn. She naively thought that because she was loyal to Her Majesty, you would send someone to save her sooner or later. So this girl's mouth was tightly shut. So many tortures were used on her, but she didn't say anything. It was Her Majesty who sent her to pass the message. Hearing Shan Yueji's words, Gu Yuan's expression finally looked better. She looked as if she had just survived a disaster after knowing that the matter hadn't been exposed. She wiped her forehead with her white hand, and there was panic on her face, as if she was afraid that the matter would be exposed. She looked down at the dying Qiu Lian, who happened to be looking at her. She moved her lips. Did she say who the mastermind was in the end? Shin Yueji smiled and touched Qiu Lian's deathly pale face. Her pretty little face was full of bumps and hollows, making it difficult to tell what she had looked like before. One of her eyes had long been destroyed by the fire. In the large Phoenix Perch Palace, one could even smell the scent of cooked meat on her body. It was fragrant and terrifying. Come, be obedient and tell this consort. Did Her Majesty order you to pass the message to this consort? Qiu Lian didn't speak. When Shan Yueji reached out her hand, she opened her mouth and wanted to bite her. Fortunately, Double Happiness reacted in time. Mao Ran whipped her face. Pa! The sound of the whip was so loud that Qiu Lian's already bruised face split open again. It was a frightening sight to behold. Even Gu Yuan, who had seen all kinds of scenes, felt a bit angry when she saw Shan Yueji treat a maidservant so cruelly. She had long known that this maidservant was a member of Auspicious Harmony Palace. Regardless of whether she knew it or not, she had always been adamant that Qiu Lian was a member of Auspicious Harmony Palace. She, the mistress of Xianghe Palace, was here, but she treated her servant like this. Did she even put her in her eyes? Right now, Gu Yuan didn't dare to voice her anger. If she dared to be angry, she would be admitting that Qiu Lian was a slave of her Auspicious Harmony Palace, and that everything Qiu Lian had done had been secretly instructed by her. If she wasn't angry, then she, Shan Yueji, was just an insignificant imperial concubine Shan. She didn't even put the empress in her eyes. In her heart, who was the master of the harem? What did she take her for? Qiu Lian let out a blood-curdling scream. In fact, she breathed in more than she breathed out. Deng Mama saw her master's hesitation and shouted angrily, Imperial concubine Shan, what are you doing? Chapter 573. Shin Yueji didn't look at her. Instead, she looked at the woman who was almost out of breath after being beaten by Shuang Shi. Nanny Deng, didn't you see what I was doing? I was interrogating a criminal. You imperial concubine Shan, don't you think you're being too arrogant? You're a first-rank imperial concubine of the Feng country. How could you treat a servant so cruelly? If His Majesty finds out, if Empress Sister didn't say anything, how would His Majesty know? Isn't Empress the one who always spoils me the most? I believe that Empress Sister won't tell His Majesty about this, right? Gu Yuan's face darkened. It was hard for her to maintain her smile. Imperial concubine Shan, no matter what wrong this servant has done, you can let the servants deal with her and give her a quick death, even if it wasn't for her, why would concubine Ying's arms be chopped off? A living beauty became like this because of a few words from her. Is a second-rank imperial concubine inferior to a lowly servant in the harem? Speaking of which, she was the one who wanted Bin Gong to go to the imperial study. However, It just so happened that I accidentally became consorting and had consorting suffer for Bin Gong. In order to give consorting an explanation, Bin Gong naturally had to interrogate her and find out who the mastermind was. Even if she smiled slightly, even if I already have the answer in my heart. You, Big Sister Empress, tell me. His Majesty didn't acknowledge anyone in the imperial study. Even Bin Gong's words sounded like they were plotting against him. Bin Gong was afraid that if I said too much, I wouldn't even be able to keep my life. In other words, if consorting hadn't taken the blame for Bin Gong, then Bin Gong would have been the one who had her arms cut off. Bin Gong doesn't have such a merciful heart to actually allow a lowly servant who wanted to put herself to death to have a quick death. I won't let her die a quick death. Xin Yueji suddenly covered her mouth and smiled. Shuangxi, go and show Empress another good one. Yes, Your Highness. Imperial concubine Shun, what do you want to do? Nothing much. I had nothing better to do today, so I sent someone to pass a message to my eldest brother. He asked him to investigate Qiu Lian's background thoroughly. He found out that she has a younger brother and a mother. When he saw Autumn Lotus's expression changed, his face that was hard to see clearly started to tremble. Seeing how her mouth is so tightly sealed and how she refuses to speak even after so many tortures, this empress can only choose another method. After all, this empress is also a person who will not rest until she achieves her goal. If others can do it, why can't this consort do it? This time, even Gu Yuan's expression changed, let alone Qiu Lian. The reason why Qiu Lian was clenching her teeth and refusing to speak was because she was using her family as a hostage. She knew that Qiu Lian did not have a good childhood. Her father was addicted to gambling. Every day, he would lose a large sum of money. Every day, he would come back and beat the three of them up. He even forced Qiu Lian's mother to sell herself to earn money. Her young mother was tortured beyond recognition by those men. Because she was too young, Qiu Lian's father could only sell her into the palace to earn a few taels of silver. Even after she entered the palace, in order to keep in touch with her mother and younger brother, she established a relationship with some influential eunuchs in the palace. This way, they could help her send letters and money outside the palace. Chapter 574. The reason why Qiu Lian was so loyal to Gu Yuan was, it was because they had found out about her identity and used her family to threaten her. She was indifferent to her father's death, but her mother and brother were her weaknesses. So when Shen Yueji ordered people to torture her, she gritted her teeth and endured. As long as she thought of her mother and brother, she wouldn't say anything even if she was tortured to death. But she didn't expect that Shen Yueji would have such a trick. She even brought her mother and brother into the palace. When she saw her mother and brother being pressed down, their clothes were torn and there were blood stains on them. Their faces were dirty. Although the torture was not as good as hers, how could they bear it? Qiu Lian shook her head in pain. Why did you do this to my brother and my mother? If you have the ability, come at me. Shen Yueji, they have no grudge against you. Why do you have to torture them like this? In the harem, which woman who died tragically was innocent? Why do you have no grudge against me here? Shen Yueji smiled faintly. Speaking of which, aren't I the same as you? If we have no grudge against each other, how did you treat me? If this empress remembers correctly, you want to kill this empress, right? May I ask if I have ever offended you before? Her words made Qiu Lian speechless, but she was forced to do it. If possible, she didn't want to offend Shen Yueji, but she was just a lowly servant who worked in Shangha Palace. At that time, Nanny Deng used her relatives to threaten her, but it was also because of her own selfishness. If she succeeded, Nanny Deng promised to give her a large sum of money. In this way, her younger brother and mother wouldn't have to live in the open with her meager salary. As long as they could get a large sum of money, they would be able to sleep in a good place and eat delicious food. Imperial concubine, this servant is begging you. If you have any problems, please come to this servant. It has nothing to do with my mother or my younger brother. My younger brother is still young and doesn't understand anything. Since the day my mother married that beast, she has never lived a good life. Imperial concubine Shan, I beg you, this servant is begging you. Let them go. If you're begging someone, then you must have the attitude of begging someone. Before you beg me, you must clearly know what I want. What she wanted was for her to admit that it was the Empress who was secretly manipulating this matter. It was the Empress who asked her to come over and tell Shen Yueji to go to the imperial study to accompany the Emperor. It was the Empress who wanted Shen Yueji dead. Qiulian turned around to look at her mother and brother. Finally, she clenched her teeth in despair and said, I'll tell you everything. As long as Imperial Consort is willing to let go of my mother and brother, I'll tell you everything. Impudent! Nanny Deng shouted angrily. Shen Yueji winked at Shuangxi. Shuangxi immediately took the order and stepped forward to block Nanny Deng. Nanny Deng, the truth will come to light soon. Your master hasn't said anything yet. As a servant, you dare to shout in front of concubine Da. Do you want to lose your tongue? Nanny Deng's expression changed. She looked at Gu Yuan, who was standing there quietly without saying anything. She bit her lip. Now that things had come to this, what else could she say? She, Shen Yueji, was fully prepared. She already knew what she had done in private. Chapter 575. That was why she dared to hide it from Qiulian, secretly investigate, and secretly bring the mother and son into the palace. She knew what Qiulian was afraid of, so she took advantage of Qiulian's weakness. She had the same goal as Qiulian, which was to threaten her. She now believed without a doubt that Qiulian would betray her. Even if it wasn't her, she would betray her for the sake of her mother and brother. Now, Gu Yuan's teeth were chattering with hatred. This Shen Yueji was too sinister. She realized that ever since she entered the palace, she and Shen Yueji had competed against each other countless times in secret and in public. But every time, Gu Yuan was the one who suffered. She had never won against her. She thought that she had done it flawlessly, but in fact, Shen Yueji had seen through everything. I admit it. It's the Empress. All of this was done by the Empress. The Empress threatened me with the lives of my mother and brother. It's... Gu Yuan rebuked angrily. The Empress suddenly showed her majesty. Qiulian was afraid after all. She immediately shut her mouth and was so afraid that she couldn't say a word. What does the Empress mean? Now the truth is in front of you. Doesn't the Empress want to know why I insist that it's you, Imperial concubine Shen, enough? Gu Yuan rebuked her angrily and looked at her coldly. Did you already know that it was me? Shen Yueji smiled without saying a word. It was Shen Yueji's indifferent expression that made Gu Yuan even more suspicious. In fact, from the beginning, when she ordered Qiulian to go to the imperial study, she had already known that she was the one behind it. Was there something fishy about it? So was this why the person who went to the imperial study was Li Yingying and not her? Then could she think that it had nothing to do with Li Yingying from the beginning? All of this seemed to be her scheme, but what she did was to beat Qiulian at her own game. Thinking of this, Gu Yuan couldn't help but feel numb. How powerful was this woman? Since she entered the palace, she had regarded this woman as a strong opponent. Now, she realized that it was underestimating her just to regard her as an opponent. She still needed to guard against her. So what if you know or not? Didn't the Emperor already know that this matter was related to the Empress? But looking at His Majesty's intentions, it seems that he doesn't intend to pursue this matter and chooses to continue protecting you, Empress? Even His Majesty can't bear to touch you, much less this consort? Bengong is the kind of person that likes to be realistic and hates it when other people play fake games with Bengong. No matter what, Ying Fei's current predicament is all because of Empress's manipulation. Don't say that you also deeply sympathize with Ying Fei's current predicament. So what if she was the mastermind? But Li Yingying's experience today, Shen Yueji couldn't absolve herself from the blame. Since she knew that this matter wouldn't be so simple, why did she let Li Yingying take the risk? He was obviously using her to get rid of Li Yingying. In the end, in Li Yingying's eyes, she was the evil person, and nothing had happened to her. Double happiness. Your Highness, since the truth of what happened today has come to light, send Qiulian and the others out of the palace. Never let them return. Yes, Your Highness. She looked at Qiulian's pitiful state and smiled. Give them another sum of money. Chapter 576. They probably didn't expect that Shen Yueji would let them go so easily. Qiulian thought that they would die in the end, but she didn't expect. She not only didn't kill them, but also gave them a sum of money. For a moment, Qiulian had mixed feelings. She knew that imperial concubine Shun was not an easy person to get along with. She had been disrespectful to the Empress many times, which made the Empress embarrassed in front of the Emperor. In fact, in her heart, she was partial to the Empress. What she didn't expect was that the Empress was the one who wanted her dead, but she was the one who wanted to save her. What does imperial concubine Shun mean? Nothing. The truth will come to light. Since the Emperor can forgive the Empress, why can't I forgive Qiulian? Is she a servant of your auspicious Harmony Palace? Shin Yueji smiled. Why? Does the Empress want to admit that you did it? Even if all the men pointed at her and everyone knew that she had something to do with what happened in the imperial study, she still didn't admit it. Moreover, even the Emperor didn't continue to investigate this matter. It was obvious that the Emperor wanted to cover it up. Gu Yuan smiled coldly. Since this is imperial concubine Shun's purpose, I have nothing to say. Speaking of this, she looked at Qiulian. Qiulian's heart trembled under her cold stare. The Empress didn't want to forgive them. Even if she ran to the end of the world, she would still die. I believe that the Empress won't embarrass me if I want to let them go, right? This matter has already reached this point. Could it be that the Empress still wants to continue? Imperial Consort Shun must be joking. Since Imperial Consort Shun has the intention to let them go, why would Bingong find trouble with her? Nanny Ding. Yes, I am here. Pass on my words. From today on, Qiulian has nothing to do with Xianghe Palace. Yes. Qiulian was so grateful that she shed tears. Many thanks to noble consort Shun. Many thanks to the Empress. This servant will never forget noble consort Shun's great kindness. In the next life, even if I become a cow or a horse, I will repay noble consort Shun's kindness. After Qiulian and her two sons left, Gu Yuan looked at their backs for a long time. Imperial consort Shun repaid kindness with evil. I believe that in this lifetime, Qiulian's heart will only be filled with guilt and gratitude towards you. In her heart, this consort has become a complete villain. As long as the Empress does as she says and doesn't make trouble for them in the future, then you will be a good person in their eyes, and they will remember your kindness for the rest of their lives. Shin Yueji sat on the round chair and took a sip of tea. I believe that the Empress has not come to see this little show. If you have something to say, just say it. Nanny Ding, you can leave now. Yes, Your Highness. Double happiness. Your Highness? You go down too. Glancing warily at Gu Yuan, Shuangshi bowed respectfully. Yes, Your Highness. This servant will take her leave. After the two of them left, only the two of them were left in the large bedroom. Gu Yuan casually picked a piece of cake and put it in her mouth. She tasted it carefully. Imperial concubine Shun must have seen what the Emperor did in the imperial study today. Shin Yueji didn't hide it and smiled. Of course. Is Imperial concubine Shun scary? To be honest, the other side of the Emperor is indeed scary. It makes people feel that he is heartless, cold-blooded, and cruel. Chapter 577. But from Bingong's point of view, the Emperor at least treated the former Empress wholeheartedly. The way he protected the former Empress today was far more than Bingong, and he did not even put the Empress in his heart. Looking at the inner palace, who was more favored than the Empress. But this time, not only did the Emperor not care about the Empress' feelings, he even reprimanded the Empress for the former Empress. Seeing that Gu Yuan's face was somewhat ugly, the latter also did not say anything. Shun Guifei is right. Not to mention Bingong, even Shun Guifei, in the eyes of the Emperor at that time, was inferior to Gu Yueqin. The Empress came to Bingong today just to talk about the Emperor's matter? The Emperor is after all the ruler of a country, the Emperor of a country, but he actually cared so much about a lowly woman. Even if the former Empress was Bingong's older sister, Bingong still has to say that she had an affair with the regent and completely disregarded the Emperor's feelings. The Emperor was infatuated with her, but she still secretly had an affair with the regent. After she died, the Emperor hid it from Bingong and found someone to replace her body. He hid her in the imperial study and gave her the medicine to not rot. If this continues, sooner or later people will know. Bingong is also thinking for the emperor. The reason why I set up Shen Guifei in the imperial study today was completely for the emperor's sake. Looking at the inner palace, only Shen Guifei is suitable. The backing of your Shen family, whether it is the emperor or that person, they would not dare to act rashly. Shen Guifei's kindness to Bingong has always been engraved in Bingong's heart, so how could I really frame you? Bingong is just borrowing your hand to get rid of that woman. When the time is right, Bingong will personally explain this matter to the emperor and will definitely not let Shen Guifei be wronged. It is a good thing that the emperor is addicted to the former empress feelings and is unable to extricate himself. It can also prove the emperor's deep feelings. But empress, your actions make Bingong somewhat puzzled. Why must you get rid of the former empress body? As you said, she is after all your older sister. Now that she is dead, why are you not willing to leave a dead person's body? Or do you really want to be like what the rumors say, that you want to torture her beyond recognition and grind her bones to ashes before you are satisfied? Shin Yueji, what do you know? The reason why I'm doing this is all for His Majesty. Gu Yueqin is already dead. The dead should be buried and rest in peace. Isn't it the Empress who is flustered? Every day, your mind is filled with the thought of your sister's body hidden in the imperial study. You think of the terrible state she was in after her death. It has been 2 months, and her body should have rotted long ago, but it is still as good as before. Are you afraid? Would she wake up one day? Who will take over your position? It was as if the thoughts in the bottom of his heart had been seen through. Gu Yuan's face paled. She couldn't remember when she had such thoughts. Did it start with Morong Yun or Feng Juqing? She couldn't remember clearly. She only knew that Gu Yueqin was a thorn in her heart. Even if she was dead, she wouldn't allow her corpse to be kept in the imperial study. Every time she thought of the man she loved who cared about her so much, and his cold eyes that couldn't wait to hurt her, her heart would throb in pain. It's not only Bingong. Could it be that imperial consort Shen doesn't feel the same way? Chapter 578. She also heard that Phoenix Perch Palace was in a mess. Footsteps rose and fell in succession, coming from everywhere. When she woke up, it was already dawn. The sunlight shone in, and she couldn't open her eyes. She moved her hand and found that her hand was held by someone. Through the owner of this hand, she saw Feng Juqing's handsome face with fatigue. He must have sat by her bed and guarded her all night. Sensing her movement, the man opened his eyes and saw that she had woken up. He stroked her forehead gently. "You're awake? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Your Majesty." Shin Yueji opened her mouth. Her voice was still very hoarse. Feng Juqing touched her little face. "You caught a cold. It was hot last night, so I fed you medicine last night." "Hot?" "Yes, Your Highness. His Majesty was worried when you fainted. He guarded you all night and even skipped the morning court session today." On the side, Double Happiness spoke carefully. "I just caught a slight cold. Maybe I accidentally caught a little wind when I went out at night. It's not a big deal. Your Majesty, how can you skip the morning court session because of me? In this way, the ministers in the court will think that I'm insensible," Shin Yueji said so much in one breath. Her hoarse voice gradually became better. The man looked at her with amusement. "I haven't said anything yet. Why are you so anxious? Your father is a first-rank general in the court. Who would dare to talk about him? Come, drink the medicine first. Tell me what you want to eat. I'll ask someone to make it for you." Looking at the bowl of black medicine in the man's hand, Shin Yueji's stomach was full and she had no appetite. Now that she saw it, she almost threw up. She covered her mouth and wanted to vomit but couldn't. The man looked worried and patted her back thoughtfully. "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Double Happiness was shocked and could no longer keep calm. "Her Highness, this. Could it be that she was pregnant? Usually, only women would have this kind of morning sickness sometimes. Also, during the period of time when the young master was gone, if the Empress was reluctant to part with him, the two of them would do it on the bed again. Come to think of it, it's not impossible." She carefully counted the time with her fingers, but soon felt that her worries were completely unnecessary. How many days had it been since the son-in-law left? Even if it was fast, it couldn't be this fast, right? Even if she was right, it would take some time. How could she have morning sickness for a few days? Thinking of this, Shuangshi calmed down and no longer felt afraid. Instead, she echoed the emperor's words. Your Highness, good medicine tastes bitter, but is good for sickness. You are still the same as when you were in the manor. Whenever I ask you to drink medicine, you want to vomit. The man smiled gently, put the broken pieces in her ears to the back of her head, and looked at her affectionately and softly. Shuangshi is right, good medicine is bitter, good for disease. Be good, drink the medicine, so that your body can be better. Your Majesty, the medicine is too bitter. This concubine doesn't want to drink it. Are you sure you don't want to drink? A teasing look appeared in the man's eyes. Just when Shun Yueji was confused, she saw Feng Juqing suddenly raise his hand and drink the bowl of medicine into his mouth. Just with a glance, Shin Yueji quickly realized what he was going to do next. Ah, she screamed. Suddenly pushed the man away and rolled down the bed. The man was pushed by her unexpected, and the bitter taste in his mouth overflowed. Chapter 579. But from Bingong's point of view, the emperor at least treated the former empress wholeheartedly. The way he protected the former empress today was far more than Bingong, and he did not even put the empress in his heart. Looking at the inner palace, who was more favored than the empress. But this time, not only did the emperor not care about the empress' feelings, he even reprimanded the empress for the former empress. Seeing that Gu Yuan's face was somewhat ugly, the latter also did not say anything. Shun Guifei is right. Not to mention Bingong, even Shun Guifei, in the eyes of the emperor at that time, was inferior to Gu Yueqin. The empress came to Bingong today just to talk about the emperor's matter? The emperor is after all the ruler of a country, the emperor of a country, but he actually cared so much about a lowly woman. Even if the former empress was Bingong's older sister, Bingong still has to say that she had an affair with the regent and completely disregarded the emperor's feelings. The emperor was infatuated with her, but she still secretly had an affair with the regent. After she died, the emperor hid it from Bingong and found someone to replace her body. He hid her in the imperial study and gave her the medicine to not rot. If this continues, sooner or later people will know. Bingong is also thinking for the emperor. The reason why I set up Shin Guifei in the imperial study today was completely for the emperor's sake. Looking at the inner palace, only Shun Guifei is suitable. The backing of your Shin family, whether it is the emperor or that person, they would not dare to act rashly. Shin Guifei's kindness to Bingong has always been engraved in Bingong's heart, so how could I really frame you? Bingong is just borrowing your hand to get rid of that woman. When the time is right, Bingong will personally explain this matter to the emperor and will definitely not let Shin Guifei be wronged. It is a good thing that the emperor is addicted to the former empress' feelings and is unable to extricate himself. It can also prove the emperor's deep feelings. But empress, your actions make Bingong somewhat puzzled. Why must you get rid of the former empress body? As you said, she is after all your older sister. Now that she is dead, why are you not willing to leave a dead person's body? Or do you really want to be like what the rumors say, that you want to torture her beyond recognition and grind her bones to ashes before you are satisfied? Shin Yueji, what do you know? The reason why I'm doing this is all for His Majesty. Gu Yueqin is already dead. The dead should be buried and rest in peace. Isn't it the Empress who is flustered? Every day, your mind is filled with the thought of your sister's body hidden in the imperial study. You think of the terrible state she was in after her death. It has been 2 months, and her body should have rotted long ago, but it is still as good as before. Are you afraid? Would she wake up one day? Who will take over your position? It was as if the thoughts in the bottom of his heart had been seen through. Gu Yuan's face paled. She couldn't remember when she had such thoughts. Did it start with Morong Yun or Feng Juqing? She couldn't remember clearly. She only knew that Gu Yueqin was a thorn in her heart. Even if she was dead, she wouldn't allow her corpse to be kept in the imperial study. Every time she thought of the man she loved who cared about her so much, and his cold eyes that couldn't wait to hurt her, her heart would throb in pain. It's not only Bingong. Could it be that imperial consort Shin doesn't feel the same way? Chapter 580. She didn't dare to ask just now. The man held her hand and smiled. I'm fine. Although I was stabbed in the vital part, the Prime Minister was there to block it. The wound is not deep. I just fainted and will recover after a few days of rest at home. The Prime Minister has taken me back to the mansion. Oh, Your Majesty, please go to the Imperial Study to deal with the official business. Feng Juqing nodded. Rest well, and don't move around. I will come back to see you after I deal with the Imperial Study. I know. Double happiness. Yes, Your Majesty. Your concubine is in good health. During this time, focus on light food. Look after her. Don't let her run around and take her medicine on time. Yes, Your Majesty. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will take good care of Your Majesty. After sending Feng Juqing off, Double Happiness got up from the ground and wiped the cold sweat on her forehead. Then she looked at Shen Yueji. Your Majesty, do you know that your reaction just now gave me a shock? Shen Yueji spat out the sugar in her mouth and wiped her mouth. What reaction? You vomited just now. Your Majesty, do you know? I almost thought you were pregnant with the son-in-law's child. If Your Majesty sends an imperial doctor to feel your pulse and give you a diagnosis, Your Majesty will know that you have cuckolded him. If Shen Yueji had water in her mouth at this moment, she would spit it out without hesitation. She touched her forehead to make sure there were no black lines on it. What did you say just now? Double Happiness was speechless. Emma Wushang just left for a few days? We just got together recently. How could I be pregnant? What the hell are you thinking about in your head every day? Do you think I'm such a casual person? Your Highness, of course you're not such a casual person, but this also depends on the situation. Son-in-law has been gone for so long. What if you're unwilling to part with him and he's unwilling to part with you? With the two of you going back and forth, Shen Yueji coughed. Double Happiness shut her mouth immediately and changed the topic. Speaking of which, there is such a thing in the Gu family. Knowing what she was talking about, Shen Yueji closed her eyes to rest. As a result, at the moment when her eyes were closed, all that lingered in her mind was Murong Yun's helpless appearance. She painfully stabbed the sharp scissors into her chest and said that she would go down to accompany her and repent. No matter how you say it, the pitiful one is still the late Empress. So it turns out that there was such a big misunderstanding, especially Lady Murong. In the past, this servant thought that she was very virtuous, but now it seems that she was pregnant before marriage. For a daughter of an aristocratic family, this is a loss of face for the entire family. This Prime Minister Gu really loves Madame Murong. He loves her so much that he doesn't even mind being cuckolded. You're right. From the beginning to the end, no one was pitiful. The only pitiful one was the late Empress. If the late Empress were still alive and knew that this was the reason why her mother treated her like this and didn't like her, I don't know what she would think. What else could she think? No matter what, the late Empress was Murong Yun's biological daughter. No matter what the reason was, it was a piece of flesh that fell from her body. The child was innocent, and she didn't know anything. Since she couldn't give her what she wanted, she should have strangled her the moment she was born. She shouldn't have let her live and suffer like that. Your Majesty, however, I am very curious about the Empress' reaction. Chapter 581. I guess the Empress already knows about this? If she found out that the reason why Madame Murong did not like her sister was because she thought that Gu Yueqin was the child of her and Gu Weisheng, it was because of her appearance that she was unable to be with the man she loves. Your Highness, I am curious about the reaction from Shangha Palace. But last night, Prime Minister Gu and Madame Murong had such a big incident that even the Emperor was alarmed. It was impossible that Shangha Palace did not react. But the Empress pretended that she did not know about it. Until now, Shangha Palace is still calm as if nothing had happened. This is not the Empress style. She is not pretending to be dead. Does she want to jump out and die? Shen Yueji smiled. Initially, Murong Yun thought that Gu Yueqin was her and Gu Wei's child. Because of Gu Yueqin's appearance, she could only marry Gu Wei unwillingly and had nothing to do with the man she loved. She hated Gu Yueqin so much that she tortured her so cruelly. Even her chastity was destroyed by a lowly servant in the Prime Minister's residence. Now, she knows the truth. Shen Yueji rubbed her brows. She even wants to kill Gu Wei with her own hands, let alone the Empress. Now, the Gu family is in a mess. We don't have to worry about them attacking the Shin family anymore. What did you say? The Gu family attacked the Shin family? Knowing that she had said too much, Double Happiness did not refute and nodded. Yes, the Gu family has been attacking the Shin family for a long time. Your Highness did not know that when Madame went out to pray, many men in black jumped out and wanted to kill her. Luckily, Madame was prepared before she went out, and there were dozens of secret guards sent by the general to protect her. That was why they did not kill her. Is Mother all right? As soon as she heard that Shen Qiu had been assassinated, Shin Yueji's heart immediately became uneasy. Her care and concern for Shen Qiu was completely higher than Murong Yun's. Even when Murong Yun committed suicide in front of her, she didn't care about it. Your Highness, don't worry. Madame is fine. She knows martial arts, but she did not let others know. Those clowns are not her match. Double Happiness. How did you know that the people who tried to assassinate my mother were from the Gu family? In the entire Feng country, only the Gu family has a grudge against our Shin family. Moreover, they are all men of sacrifice. We can't even force them to tell us who the mastermind is. Luckily, eldest young master has a trick up his sleeve. He didn't make the survivor commit suicide. This servant heard that this group of people were all sent by Gu Wei. He saw that Nyangnyang's limelight in the palace had overshadowed the previous empress, so he was helping his daughter gain the limelight so that Nyangnyang will remember. But this servant thinks that this is definitely Gu Yuan playing tricks behind the scenes. Although this Gu Wei has often acted against our Shin family, recently His Majesty entrusted the Shin family with a major matter. Gu Wei is currently busy. If it wasn't for Gu Yuan begging him, he definitely wouldn't have the time to deal with us. Only the Empress could think of such a sinister move to attack a weak woman. Seeing Shin Yueji come down from the bed, Shuangxi jumped in fright. Nyang Nyang. What happened? Chapter 582. She was somewhat surprised by her reaction. You have caught a cold. Where do you want to go? Do you know that you really scared this servant last night? My whole body was as hot as a stove, and this servant was worried that you would explode. Shin Yueji stared at her for a while. Why did Ben Gong have a fever last night? Perhaps it's because your ladyship is always running around at night and caught a cold from the wind. Shin Yueji did not refute. Ben Gong went to Shanghe Palace to have a look. In the past, if this happened in Bengong's Fengqi Palace, the Empress would have kindly come over to express her condolences. Such a big thing happened in the Shin family, and Ben Gong has been taken care of by the Empress since I entered the palace. No matter what, I have to go and perform. Shuangxi almost couldn't hold back her laughter. Nyang Nyang, this servant found that you are really naughty now. The person Gu Yuan didn't want to see the most was her Nyang Nyang, but Nyang Nyang insisted on rushing over to let her see. Under her eyes, she was afraid that others wouldn't know how proud Nyang Nyang was now. In addition, for the sake of the imperial concubine, the emperor couldn't even attend morning court. This was the first time since ancient times that the emperor was able to put aside court affairs. Even she, who was deeply loved by the emperor, didn't have this special treatment. Hearing this, Shin Yueji couldn't help laughing. She probably felt it was funny. That's right. Since she has the ability to scheme against Mother, then she should have the ability to take Bengong's show off. Nyang Nyang. Is there anything wrong with your body? If the emperor knows that you ran around again, I'm afraid that the emperor will not let this servant look after you next time. Shin Yueji rolled her eyes and glanced at Gao Dazhong, who came with her. Gao Gonggong did not say anything. What are you afraid of? Even if the emperor wants to find trouble, he will definitely find Gao Gonggong. Who made Gao Dazhong the emperor's favorite person? Gao Dazhong was about to cry when she mentioned it like this. He lowered his head. Nyang Nyang. Don't blame this servant for being talkative. Your body is weak now, and it's better not to run around. Otherwise, if the emperor asks, this servant will really be blamed. Don't worry, I'm just going to see Empress Jiejia and talk to her. After comforting her, I will naturally come back. His Majesty won't make trouble for you. Sitting in the carriage, Shin Yueji comforted her gently. The current auspicious Harmony Palace was very different from before. If it was before, the palace would be surrounded by palace maids and eunuchs. But now, Looking at the fallen leaves on the ground, it seemed as if they hadn't been swept since morning. If I didn't see the words Auspicious Harmony Palace written on the signboard, this servant would have thought that I had entered the cold palace. Double Happiness snorted. Shin Yueji sat there and did not move. She saw a little palace maid running out of the room in panic. She winked at Doublespeak. Double Happiness immediately went forward and blocked the palace maid's path. The palace maid looked up, and when she saw Shin Yueji's carriage, she was shocked and quickly knelt down. Greetings, Imperial Consort. Why are you so rash? Did something happen? Where is your Empress? Empress. Her delicate face turned red and there were tears in the corner of her eyes. Under Shan Yueji's scrutinizing gaze, her head suddenly hit the ground heavily, making a series of loud noises. Just hearing it made people's scalps tingle. Chapter 583. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness, please save us. Seeing her like this, Shun Yueji was puzzled. What's wrong? Why did you ask for help? Did you do something wrong? No. The little maid shook her head violently. We didn't do anything wrong. It's Her Majesty. It's her, she cried bitterly and said. It's Her Majesty who has gone mad. Sob, Her Majesty has gone mad. She beats us whenever she sees us, and she even broke Xiao Tsue's leg. Half of the servants in Xianghe Palace were beaten to death by her. We didn't dare to resist. Her Majesty didn't allow us to run away. She said that if we ran away, she would kill our parents who were far away outside the palace. Sob, Imperial Consort, I beg you to save us servants. This servant's parents died a long time ago after giving birth to this servant, so this servant dared to run out. Nonsense. Her Majesty is generous, gentle, and virtuous. You didn't do anything wrong. How could she treat you so cruelly? Because Her Majesty knows that the former Empress is the child of Lady Murong and someone else. She knows that Lady Murong and the Prime Minister have broken up, so she is so angry. Your Highness, I'm not lying. If you don't believe me, you can go in and have a look. Even Nanny Deng was not spared. One of Nanny Deng's arms was chopped off by Her Majesty. Looking at the little maid kneeling on the ground and crying bitterly, Shun Yueji actually believed her. She glanced at her lightly and was a little surprised that Murong Yun chopped off one of Nanny Deng's arms. After all, Nanny Deng was her confidant. Maoran remembered that Nanny Deng was arranged by Murong Yun to be by her side. No wonder Gu Yuan was so cruel. Your Highness? Double Happiness stood behind her. Her Majesty is crazy now. If you go in, will she hurt you? With you by my side, she doesn't even know martial arts. How can she hurt me? But she doesn't care about anything and kills indiscriminately in the harem. Does she not want the position of Empress anymore? If Feng Juqing were to find out about this, even if he wanted to protect her, it would be difficult. Now that something like this had happened to the Gu family, Gu Wei's entire heart was on Murong Yun. He had no time to care about Gu Yuan at all. He had even resigned from the morning court. In a short period of time, it was estimated that he would not interfere with court matters. At this time, Gu Yuan was digging her own grave. Shin Yueji walked past the little palace maid kneeling on the ground. Go and treat your wounds first. I will go and take a look. Thank you, Imperial Consort. Thank you, Imperial Consort. After the little palace maid thanked him, she got up from the ground and ran off without looking back. Her body was not without injuries. Her hind legs were dragging and trembling with every step she took. It looked like her legs were injured. Standing at the entrance of the main hall of Xianghe Palace, he could hear countless miserable howls and pleas from far away. The screams of the palace maids and eunuchs rose and fell. Shin Yueji stood outside the hall. Just hearing these voices, she couldn't help but frown. At first, she thought that Gu Yuan was so calm, as if nothing had happened. This was not like her character. Now, after hearing the miserable movements in Xianghe Palace, she realized that according to Gu Yuan's character, how could she continue to be quiet? The servants in Xianghe Palace were all being tortured by her. So when she entered, there was no need for any report. Chapter 584. The sound she heard outside the hall made her frown. But when she entered the hall and saw the mess inside, she frowned. There was not even a crack. She was not born to be a merciful and compassionate person, but she was definitely not someone who would willfully kill the innocent. A sharp-eyed servant saw her and quickly crawled towards her. Imperial concubine, save us. Imperial concubine, save us. Her Highness is crazy. She wants to kill us. She wants to kill us. She stood in front of her, so that the servant, who was covered in blood, did not grab her clothes. But Gu Yuan still saw that under her bloody face, there was a bit of familiarity. The old voice was very hoarse and not as sharp as before. She slightly lowered her eyes and tentatively called, "Deng Mama?" Deng Mama suddenly raised her head and looked at her. "Imperial concubine. It's me. It's me. Imperial concubine. Save me. Save me." Her hand was empty and hung in the air. She was covered in blood, and there were a few scratches on her face. It was a ghastly and frightening sight. Shun Yueji. Gu Yuan did not expect that Shun Yueji would come to protect her. Her voice became a bit sharp, and she stared at her fiercely. She was the one who carried out the torture, and her body was stained with a lot of blood. But the blood did not belong to her, but belonged to the servant girls who were tortured by her. When those servants, who were tortured to the point of death, saw her coming, their eyes showed a look of begging for mercy. Some of them could not speak and could only lie on the ground, gasping for breath, just like the dead. They were about to die. Shin Yueji's face was calm and indifferent. "What is the Empress doing?" Gu Yuan smiled coldly. "Can't Imperial concubine Shan see what Bingong is doing? Why? Are you here to see me make a fool of myself? Are you proud?" Yesterday, the Empress told Bingong that it is taboo to abuse private punishment in the harem. Bingong doesn't know what these servants have done, so that you are so cruel to kill them. Cruel? Ha ha ha. She suddenly laughed. "Shin Yueji, do you know what is cruel? I am the most cruel person. Don't you already know? My mother was such a pure and noble person. Did you know that she had an affair with another man and gave birth to that bitch? Do you know that in one night, I became the laughing stock of the world? Do you know that not only in the capital, but even in auspicious Harmony Palace, this consort has heard what they are talking about? They were secretly discussing in the corner whether I was also Prime Minister Gu's daughter or not. They even laughed at Prime Minister Gu and wanted him to have a blood test with me. Pa!" She casually picked up a servant girl who had been tortured to the point of death and slapped her across the face. The maidservant spat out another mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, unconscious. I didn't expect Morong Yun to be such a person. She disgusts me. How could my mother be such a disgusting person? She and another man. She and another man. You only remember her disgust, but not the slightest bit of good about her, right? All right? As if she had heard something funny, Gu Yuan suddenly laughed out loud. Good? Shin Yueji, what do you think is good about her? She tortured her own daughter so cruelly. Is she good? Not only is she disgusting, she is also the most vicious mother in the world. Chapter 585. She didn't treat the late Empress well, but she doted on you and didn't allow you to suffer any grievances. Whatever you wanted, she would find a way to get it for you. In the entire capital, who wouldn't be jealous when your name is mentioned? If I had known that she was such a disgusting person, I would rather she wasn't my mother. If I could do it all over again, I would never let her be my mother. Shin Yueji raised a sarcastic smile at the corner of her mouth. This was Morong Yun's little daughter, who had been in the palm of her hand since she was a child. She was doted on by thousands of people. Because of her words and her unhappiness, she didn't know how many times she would be beaten and how many times they would abuse and insult her in a day. At that time, she really didn't hate and didn't know what it was. She only knew that she desperately wanted to be loved by Morong Yun. She wanted to let her know that she was also her daughter. She hoped that one day, she would change her mind and remember her. She could remember that apart from Gu Yuan, she had another daughter. She worked harder than Gu Yuan and expected more love and care from her than Gu Yuan. She didn't know what it was to hate. She only knew that if one day, She could be loved by Morong Yun and enjoy being a mother. She would love to touch her head and praise her. Even if it was just this one sentence, she would be willing to die. Shin Yueji's eyes were a little red. She thought that she had faded a lot, but now that she thought about it, it was still a knot in her heart. She took a step back and looked directly at Gu Yuan's cold and contemptuous face. The reason why you're complaining now is because you haven't tasted the feeling of being ignored by her and being bullied by thousands of people. Ignored? Hasn't she ignored me enough? Shin Yueji, she already regretted it. Do you know that she already regretted it? She regretted it before, and now that she knows that Gu Yuan is the flesh and blood that she gave birth to with that man, I don't know how much she regretted it. I'm guessing that she now deeply regrets treating Gu Yuan like that for me. Now, I'm sure that she already wants to transfer all the pain and tiredness that she suffered from Gu Yuan to me. Shin Yueji did not speak, because she knew that Morong Yun was such a person. In the past, she had thought that her birth prevented her from being with the man she loved. So ever since she could remember, her mother had never been nice to her. In her mind, this mother hated her and never liked her. Now that she knew the truth of the past, she regretted everything she had done to herself. Even Gu Yuan was no exception. She could even kill Gu Wei so ruthlessly. What more her? In fact, Gu Yuan knew her mother better than she did. She had spent more time with her than her and received more love from her. How could she not know what kind of person she was? Speaking of which, that silly sister of mine is really pitiful. Perhaps she was a little tired. Gu Yuan sat on the steps and laughed foolishly. That silly sister of mine. Before her death, Morong Yun felt that she was a daughter born from her father. Because of her birth, her mother had never liked her. Not only mother doesn't like it, but I don't like it either. Chapter 586. That silly sister of mine. When she was alive, Morong Yun felt that she was the daughter of her father. Because of her birth, her mother had never liked her. Not only did my mother not like her, but I didn't like her either. When I was young, I didn't understand why they treated her that way. They even pitted her. When I grew up, bullying her had become an unavoidable habit. She was a dispensable existence in the Prime Minister's residence. Not to mention us, even the lowliest servants, dogs, and cats didn't need to care about her. Now that she's dead, I'm afraid she won't know why Morong Yun loved me so much, but hated her so much. She must be thinking, why is there such a big difference between the two of us, even though we're both Morong Yun's daughters? Hearing this, she suddenly chuckled. Unfortunately, I'm afraid she'll never know the answer she's been thinking about all her life. Because she's already in her eternal rest, she'll never understand that it was all a misunderstanding. My mother, who should have treated her with such sincerity and love, used this love on me. She's destined to be a plaything for the rest of her life, spurned by everyone. In the past, Shen Yueji hated the woman in front of her. She hated her because she was her younger sister, and she was her older sister. She hated her unreasonable ways. She hated that she relied on her mother's love to disregard her as her older sister and snatched away everything that belonged to her. She even had to persuade herself repeatedly that she was her younger sister and that she should tolerate and give in to her. Later on, she saw her together with the woman she loved. At the last moment, she even snatched away her brother-in-law. She didn't care about the position of Empress, but she snatched away the only man that mattered to her. Now, seeing her in this state, Shin Yueji sighed softly. She suddenly looked at things a lot calmer. Perhaps from the moment Morong Yun regretted it, or perhaps from the moment she knew of Feng Juqing's duplicity, she knew that she had never slept with him, and she knew that they had no children. Fate had given her a second chance. Her purpose in life was to take revenge. However, when she found out the truth, everyone had their own ending. Their ending was in their own hands. She was just an outsider and had no right to interfere. She squatted down in front of Gu Yuan and looked down at her pale, flustered, and resentful face. Although Gu Yuan is dead, it doesn't mean that she lost. From the beginning, you were the one who lost. When Gu Yuan raised her head and looked into her eyes, Shin Yueji smiled. Do you know why you lost? Because you were selfish, arrogant, vain, and had no respect for your superiors. You think that everything you set your eyes on is yours. You are not allowed to covet what belongs to you. If someone tries to steal what belongs to you, you will eliminate them regardless of the consequences. As for your biological parents, you knew that they loved and protected you, but you hated them to the bone for your own selfish desires just because of a seemingly scolding sentence from them. Guiyuan, I've never understood how someone like you is able to survive all this time. Is it because God, after giving you all the honor and glory, wants you to have a taste of how miserable it is to fall into the dust from the highest point? Is it so hard for people to accept it and feel despair? God had God, an army. Chapter 587. It's none of your business. So what if you're gloating over my misfortune? I'm the Empress of Feng Country, the master of the harem. In this harem, I have the final say. So what if you're favored? Prosperity is fading. His Majesty is only interested in your face and the power of your Shun family. So, I'm not jealous of you at all. Not at all. Anyone who is favored by His Majesty is a joke. Guiyuan smiled as she stood up from the ground. Looking at the servant she had destroyed, she angrily lashed him with her whip. Last night, when the Emperor came to see me, I always thought he was here to coax me. He was still the same as before. He said that I'm his Empress, the Empress for life. He said that he and I will look down on Feng Country. But in the end, once Morong Yun's matter was exposed, he asked the servant beside him to announce that I'm not of good birth and I've disgraced the name of the Empress. He asked me to hand over the Phoenix seal. Xin Yueji, he's so heartless to me. Xin Yueji was shocked when she heard these words from Gu Yuan's mouth. She didn't expect Feng Juqing to be so heartless. The Gu family didn't collapse. It was just that Morong Yun's scandal was exposed. The daughter Morong Yun gave birth to with another man was already dead. Gu Yuan was indeed the daughter of her and Gu Weisheng. Although her reputation wouldn't be good because of Morong Yun, the position of the Empress of Feng Country was still unshakable. He actually really wanted to destroy her? She seemed to understand why Gu Yuan didn't care about anything and killed indiscriminately in Shanghe Palace. She wasn't afraid that Feng Juqing would find out and destroy her. So he had already sent someone to tell her that he wanted to destroy her position as the Empress. Gu Yuan staggered to Shun Yueji. She wanted to stand in front of her, but Shun Yueji glanced at her. Gu Yuan put her hands on her shoulders. She was smiling, but her eyes were filled with tears. Do you think that's all he's heartless to me? No, there are many, many more. I only found out now that the things he did in secret were all his doing. Xin Yueji, you will never know how much I love him. I love him more than my sister. I can die for him. I can abandon everything for him. But what did he give me in return? He wants to cripple me for you. How ridiculous. The man I love is going to cripple me for you? Just like how he wanted to cripple Gu Yueqin for me. Come to think of it, I'm much better than Gu Yueqin. At least, he spoke to me in a tone of discussion. But to Gu Yueqin, he didn't even bother to discuss with her and directly executed her. The position of Empress is above all. What do you think? She laughed loudly. Isn't it just the position of Empress? Xin Yueji, he wants you to be the Empress. Elder sister has been the Empress for 3 days, and this consort has been the Empress for 2 months. I wonder how long can you last? I wonder how many more women will be sent to the palace after this. I wonder how long your beautiful face will be able to be maintained. Is it that when he gets tired of you, another beautiful woman will replace you? No. Xin Yueji lowered her eyes and looked at her as if she was looking at a dead person. Chapter 588. No one will be able to shake your position as Empress. Hearing this, Gu Yuan raised her head and looked at her. You spent so much effort to snatch something from someone else. How can you hand it over so easily? I want you to continue being the Empress until you die. Gu Yuan's eyes widened. She didn't know why, but she felt scared when she looked at Xin Yueji. She seemed to think of the moment when Gu Yueqin was dying. She also looked at her with such hatred. She didn't understand why she would associate the person in front of her with Gu Yueqin. She stepped back in embarrassment. Xin Yueji, what do you want to do? I won't do anything. I'll just sit and wait for you to dig your own grave. Gu Yuan, you are the empress of the country. Everyone in the world will despise you for what happened today. You must have been the one who tried to assassinate my mother when she went out, right? A trace of panic flashed across the young girl's face. But now, Shun Yueji knew everything that she had done. She knew that everything that she had done behind Shin Yueji's back was clearly seen by Shin Yueji under Shin Yueji's eyes. So what if I did it? I can't touch you, but can I touch her? Shin Yueji, I advise you to let your parents go out less. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that they can live safely. Slap. Knowing that Shun Yueji would hit her, Gu Yuan's face was tilted. She smiled coldly and her eyes were full of sarcasm. Are you angry? I'm going to lose everything soon anyway. But I don't mind taking advantage of this time to make trouble for you. You're right. I'm selfish. I can't bear to see the people I hate live better than me. I can't bear to see it. When the man I like likes you, he'll make you the empress. Do you think everyone is like Gu Yueqin, who can be bullied and manipulated by you without daring to resist? Shin Yueji's face turned cold. If my mother is missing a head, believe it or not, I can make you beg for death in this harem. Do you think you can touch me? Gu Yuan laughed proudly. Even if I'm abandoned by the Gu family and betrayed by everyone in the world, there's one person who will never betray me. Lunar Shadow. The man's handsome face appeared in front of her. But when he looked at her, his gaze was as cold as ice. Only when he looked at Gu Yuan, his gaze was filled with love and obsession. Her hand caresses the man's handsome face, feeling the man's mood change. The whole body's inhuman because of her intimacy and become fluctuating. I still remember, back then, Yu Ying's entire body was covered in blood as he collapsed at the entrance of the Prime Minister Manor. There were so many people coming and going, and all of them were treating him like a snake or scorpion, thinking that he was a dead man. At that time, the Empress also saw it. She also said that it was inauspicious for a dead person to fall in front of the Prime Minister's mansion and ordered people to throw him somewhere else. Gu Yuan's expression didn't change. So what? Then, there was a heavy rain, and the first Empress came back from outside. She happened to see this man who was on his last breath. At this point, Gu Yuan's expression suddenly changed. Other than Gu Yueqin and her, no one else knew about this, not even Lunar Shadow. She suddenly looked at Shun Yueji. How did you know about this? Shun Yueji didn't answer her question. Instead, she glanced at the arrogant man. Chapter 589. A trace of bewilderment appeared on his fair face. I also know that it was the late Empress who used all her strength to carry him back to her residence. She took care of him for 3 days and 3 nights before barely saving his life. But before he woke up, you want to find trouble with Gu Yueqin. Seeing that this man was rather good-looking, you ordered people to move him to your residence and make him your slave. Yu Yin's straight back suddenly became extremely stiff. Gu Yuan's face was completely drained of blood. Facing Yu Yin's gaze, she actually couldn't refute. Unfortunately, when he woke up, the first person he saw was you, and he thought that you were his savior. From that day onwards, he became loyal and obedient to everything you said. Even if he had to climb a mountain of daggers or go through a sea of flames, it would only take a word from you for him to willingly charge forward for you. But he forgot, in the 3 days that he was unconscious, who was the one who took care of him. He helped you deal with Gu Yueqin together, framed her, and tortured her together. With every word that Shen Yueji said, the man's body would tremble a little. His dark eyes rolled and his handsome face instantly became extremely pale. His palms trembled slightly, and the hand that was holding the sword became unstable. His dark eyes looked at Shen Yueji. His thin lips moved slightly. Endless pain, regret, shock, and disbelief flashed across his eyes. All sorts of emotions intertwined. The truth of the matter, was it really like this? The person who saved him was not Gu Yueqin, but her? How do you know all this? Shin Yueji, how do you know all this? Even father doesn't know about this. Only Gu Yueqin and I know. You don't have much contact with her. How do you know all this? What I've done will be found out sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. Now, do you think Yu Yin will still help you protect you? I, Yuin, Yuin, I. Gu Yueqin reached out and wanted to pull him. But the man's gaze was as cold as ice. If a moment ago, he was like fire to her. But now, he was like ice, a stranger like an enemy. She was frightened by the look in his eyes. Yuin, what do you mean? Do you want to betray me too? I admit, the person who took care of you for those 3 days was Gu Yueqin. The person who saved your life was also her. But she only took care of you for 3 days. You spent the rest of the time recuperating in my courtyard. I was the one who ordered people to serve you. Otherwise, it would be impossible for you to be alive. Yes, in the end, she ordered people to take care of him, but she raised him like a dog. However, seeing that she was his savior, Ewing had always been obedient to her words. No matter how she treated him, he would silently endure it. He had followed her silently, taking care of her and protecting her for so many years. Go with her to deal with her sister. He thought of the things he had done to that woman. The man felt a sharp pain in his heart. Unknowingly, he did not know how many things he had done to hurt her. She was his savior, and he should have protected her, but he treated her like this, biting the hand that fed him. His heart felt like it was being pulled by someone. It was so painful that it was suffocating. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. Why did he treat you so well? Why did he obediently endure everything that you did to him without any complaints or regrets? That's because he saw you as his savior. Now, he knows that the person who saved his life was killed by his own hands not long ago, and that he played a significant role in it. Chapter 590. Your Highness, do you think he will stay by your side and never betray you? Karma is a cycle. It's not that karma doesn't exist, but it's not the right time yet. You've been the superior and worshipped empress for 2 months. Now it's time for you to taste the feeling of having everything taken away from you. What do you think? How does it feel to be abandoned by your own family? Shin Yueji stopped looking at the woman on the ground, smiled and left. Seeing this, Shuangshi hurried to follow her. Just a moment after she walked out of Xianghe Palace, she heard footsteps behind her. Without looking back, she knew who it was. She stopped and waited for the man to come forward and block her way. Who are you? Why do you know all this? Since it's happened, someone will know about it. You didn't repent in front of the late Empress's body, but came to me to ask me. What do you mean? She saw the change of the man's expression. You helped the Empress in the Imperial study yesterday. What did you do to the late Empress's body? I don't think I need to tell you. The Imperial study was heavily guarded. There were so many highly skilled secret guards standing guard. Yet, you were able to effortlessly eliminate those dark guards and secretly control all of this. This is enough to show how powerful your martial arts are. It's a pity that you followed the wrong master and did the wrong thing. I didn't know she was the one who saved me. All this while, I thought, Gu Yuan has been high and mighty since she was young. You're just a passerby covered in blood. With her noble status, do you think she would be so kind as to save you? Carry you back to the Prime Minister's mansion? Because he knew she wouldn't, he believed Shin Yueji's words when he saw the expression on Gu Yuan's face. His emotions were complicated, and the tension he felt made him feel uncomfortable. Compared to the fact that he had killed his savior, Gu Yuan had been lying to him all this time, which was more difficult for him to accept. He had always thought that the person who saved him was Gu Yuan. This thought had never changed. It had always been like this. But now, Shin Yueji told him that the person who saved him was Gu Yueqin, and that person, you don't have to feel bad. After all, Gu Yueqin is dead. Isn't the person you like now Gu Yuan? Don't you men like arrogant and despotic young ladies who look glamorous on the surface and make you want to protect them? No one would like someone like the former empress, who was weak and useless, who would only hide and cry when something happened. Even if she was bullied, she did not dare to refute. Even if you knew that she was your savior, what could you do? Double happiness. Your Highness. Let's go. Yes. Shuangshi followed him obediently and didn't look at the man's reaction. Shin Yueji had walked a long distance, but the man behind her was still standing there, looking lost, as if he hadn't moved at all. Your Highness, how did you know about Yu Ying and the late Empress? I dreamed of it. You dreamed of it? Shuangxi opened his mouth in shock. Dream? Was Her Highness a prophet? Xin Yueji smiled and glanced at her. Of course. Haven't there been a lot of strange things happening in the palace recently? Chapter 591. Maybe the late Empress thought I was good and told me this in my dreams. She told me this in my dreams. Shuangxi was speechless. Her ladyship was awesome. However, Empress, this Yu Ying's martial arts are really very high. This servant has been sizing him up earlier, but I am actually unable to determine how much inner energy he has. Normally, those who are able to conceal their inner energy are all top-notch experts. I didn't expect that there was such a powerful person by the Empress side. No wonder he is so fearless. Even without the Gu family to back him up, I think that Yuan alone would be able to bring him out of the palace. Gu Yuan comes from a good family and has top-notch looks. What's so strange about the heavens favoring her? Shun Yueji sneered. Hearing the meaning behind her words, Shuangxi pouted. So what if she comes from a good family? She can't compare to you now. The Gu family has 2 daughters, but you are different. You are the only one in the entire Shin family, and you are the general's wife's treasure. Moreover, in terms of looks, how could Gu Yuan compare to you? Your Highness? Your Highness, you are the true beauty that can topple cities. His words made Shin Yueji laugh perfectly. Find that little maidservant who ran out earlier. Your ladyship wants to find her? Harmony in Gongshang is such a big thing. With Gu Yuan there to suppress it, no matter how badly those servants are tortured by her, they don't dare to say a word. Since she attacked Mother first, then don't blame this consort for pushing behind the scenes and spreading the news, especially to that palace maid. The more the better. Yes. Shuangxi was about to go look for her when she thought of the man just now. Your ladyship, do you think Yuan will still help the Empress? Yes. Xin Yueji answered without hesitation. Shuangxi said, his martial arts are so good. He will help, but he won't use his full strength like before. After all, even if he knows the truth, his love for Gu Yuan is real. He has liked her for so many years. How can he not like her after knowing the truth? That's not like him either. This servant understands. I'm going to the Huayang Palace to see Concubine Ro. After you're done, find me there. Yes. Huayang Palace, Your Highness. Why did you tell Murong Yuan all of this? Lu Hui helped Lu Qingru change her clothes. These days, perhaps it was because of Imperial Concubine Shun, she could clearly feel that her ladyship's mood was much better. This is what she owes Qing'er. Lu Qingru smiled faintly. The face of the woman in the bronze mirror was as white as snow. Her delicate face was still beautiful even without any makeup. She caressed her face with her hand, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. A cold glint flashed across her eyes. She saw Murong Yun's repentance, and Qing'er naturally saw it too. Now that she had finally escaped from the Gu family's cage, if she was touched by Murong Yun's current appearance again and reconciled with her, she subconsciously clenched her fists. Her Qing'er could only be hers. Everyone in this world would lie to her and betray her, but she wouldn't. She wanted Qing'er to know that in this world, she was the only one who treated her sincerely and loved her. Those people, no matter who, including Murong Yun, her biological mother, she would never let her Qing'er soften and forgive her again. Chapter 592. She could forgive the pain Murong Yun had caused her. She wouldn't. Look, do I look good in this? Your Highness is so beautiful. Of course you look good in anything. It's just that. But what? Lu Qingru looked at her. Your Highness, your body has been nurtured for the past few days. This servant can clearly feel that your mood is much more cheerful than before and you like to smile. However, your clothes are still too simple. Look at the imperial consort. She is always bright and beautiful. Why don't you dress more beautifully too? The imperial consort should like this kind of gorgeous. Because she is the imperial consort of a country, she naturally needs to wear gorgeous clothes. In fact, in her heart, she still likes these simple clothes. Lu Qingru smiled and applied some light makeup on her eyebrows. I heard that she is sick. At the mention of this, Her eyebrows were filled with worry and a touch of killing intent. Her heartache was obvious. Your Highness, this servant also heard that it was a minor cold caused by Morong Yun and the others at the imperial consort's place. It is said that after Morong Yun fainted in Phoenix Perch Palace, the Empress found out and left after taking a look, leaving her biological mother in Phoenix Perch Palace. In the end, it was Prime Minister Gu who personally came to pick her up. At that time, she hated Qin and doted on this daughter of hers. Now it seems that it is really ironic. She put on her clothes and said, "Come with me to Phoenix Perch Palace to see Ji." "Yes, Your Highness." Lu Hui prepared the things and was about to help her out when suddenly, she felt a weight on her back and her vision became dizzy. Lu Qingrou's tranquil face slowly became blurry in front of her eyes. Her head hit the ground and she collapsed. Seeing her faint on the ground, Lu Qingrou's expression did not change, but the gaze in her eyes instantly became as cold as ice. I said, "Don't bother me anymore. Holy Maiden, we are also under the orders of the Holy Mother to invite you back." The masked woman bowed respectfully and said, "Please do not make things difficult for us, Holy Maiden. Do you think, now, I will go back with you obediently?" It was not easy for her to reunite with Qin and this time, she did not plan to leave. When Qin died, she was disheartened. She could listen to that woman, but now, Qin was still in this world. She wanted to continue to stay by her side and never be separated from her. If the Holy Maiden is reluctant to part with Shan Yueji, this subordinate can bring her back to the northern underworld. This way, the Holy Maiden can be with her forever. The woman spoke like a machine. Other than respect, there were no other fluctuations. Hearing this, Lu Qingrou's eyes flashed, and she seemed to be satisfied with her suggestion. If he brought Qin back to the Dark North Kingdom, she would be able to stay with him forever. We will never be apart. In the Feng Nation, she was still Feng Jiuqing's woman in name. She could not do anything. After all, this was not the Shiming sect's territory. However, things were different in the Feng Nation. That place was filled with people from the Shiming sect. Not only could she protect Qin but even Imo Wushang couldn't snatch Qin away from her. However, this thought only appeared for a moment before it was rejected by her. The light in her eyes, which had just risen, dimmed at this moment. Chapter 593. What she wanted was Qin willingness. She wanted her to be willing. To make her happy, not to force her to do something she didn't want to do. The veiled woman seemed to see through her concerns and said respectfully, "I know that Saintess cares about Imperial Concubine Shan's feelings, but Saintess is the person Imperial Concubine Shan cares about the most in this world. Everything Saintess does is for Imperial Concubine Shan. I believe that Imperial Concubine Shan understands Saintess' good intentions. In Feng Country, there is no one for her to miss. The scenery of Northern Underworld is more beautiful than Feng Country. When I go to Feng Qi Palace, I will have a good talk with her. If her words reveal her yearning for Northern Underworld." She suddenly smiled. "I will take her and leave Feng Country together." The veiled woman heard this and her face under the veil finally showed a gentle expression. No matter what, even if Shun Yueji was unwilling, she had to kidnap her and return to Northern Underworld with Saintess. Saintess had been urging them for a long time. They couldn't stay here any longer. When Lu Hui woke up, she was still lying on the ground. She rubbed her sore neck. "Strange? Why are you lying on the ground? Concubine Shun?" She couldn't help but panic when she didn't find Lu Qingru in the main hall. Fortunately, when she entered the inner hall, she saw Concubine Shun changing clothes. She sighed, "Concubine Shun, you almost scared me to death. I thought something happened to you." Lu Qingru looked at her with a smile. "What could happen to me? Didn't I tell you just now that I wanted to come in and change clothes? The clothes I wore just now are a little old, so I asked you to wait outside. Look at you. What's wrong? Did you lose your memory?" She kept feeling that something was wrong, but seeing that Lu Qingru was safe and sound, Lu Hui shook her head. No. This servant just suddenly fell asleep. I thought that someone had sneaked into our Huayang Palace to harm Her Highness," she said with lingering fear. Lu Qingru looked at her in amusement. Don't worry, I've already severed my ties with those people from the Jianghu. They aren't the kind of people who don't know what's good for them. After all, this is the imperial palace. Those people from the Jianghu would more or less be afraid of Feng Juqing. As she spoke, she had already changed her clothes. Let's go and see Jier. There's no need to go. I'm already here. Xin Yueji's voice came from outside. Lu Qingru was startled when she heard what Xin Yueji said. Then, her face lit up with joy. She quickly walked forward and grabbed Xin Yueji's hand. Jier, you came to see me? Her eyes were bright and filled with surprise as she looked at Xin Yueji. I had nothing to do in the palace, so I came to see you. Lu Qingru looked at her worriedly. I heard that you caught a cold and I have been worried about you. Have you taken any medicine? Are you feeling better now? Of course it's to take the medicine. Look, I've come here personally. Isn't that good enough? Xin Yueji looked at her, amused. Lu Hui, who was at the side, could not help but laugh. This servant had just told her ladyship that after Shen Guifei caught a cold, her ladyship was so worried that her face changed. He insisted on visiting your highness. Speaking of the cold, Xin Yueji frowned and pulled her hand out of Lin Mengya's. Lu Qingru was stunned. Her empty hands no longer had her warmth. Her heart was filled with disappointment. Your body is weak. It's better not to infect you with my cold. At that time, both of us will fall sick. What should we do? Chapter 594. With her explanation, Lu Qingru's depressed mood improved a little. Qin, you know that I never care about these things. Saying that, she took her hand again. Take good care of yourself. Don't hurt yourself again. Do you know that I am really worried about you? I know, of course I know. Shun Yueji smiled. Don't worry. I care about my body more than anyone else. Actually I came here to ask you something. She glanced at her and suddenly spoke. Her expression was serious, and there was no longer a smile on her face. Realizing that something was wrong, Lu Qingru gave Lu Hui a look. Lu Hui said respectfully, this servant will go brew some tea for Her Highness and Imperial Consort Shen. After Lu Hui left, Lu Qingru held her hand. Qin, what do you want to ask me? Last night, Murong Yun suddenly went crazy in the Phoenix Perch Palace and almost killed Gu Wei. Do you know about this? Lu Qingru's eyes flickered, but she still answered truthfully, I know. Originally, she was living well in Phoenix Palace and was in a coma for a period of time, but that was all because of me. Later, Shuangxi left for a period of time, and when she came back, she suddenly went crazy and said something wrong. Everything was wrong. She was wrong. During this period, someone entered Phoenix Palace and talked to her. Shun Yueji did not deliberately mention names, but the two of them understood each other for many years, and Lu Qingru knew that she was doubting herself. Qin, are you doubting me? Thinking of this, she also asked the same question. In front of one's most beloved person, there was nothing more unacceptable and breathless than her doubting herself. In the entire harem, I have to admit that I haven't made any friends who are willing to sacrifice so much for me. Even if there are a few who feel indignant for me, it's impossible for them to have the ability to come and go as they please in my Phoenix Perch Palace without anyone knowing. Even though the side hall was not my residence, there were still many secret guards guarding it. No matter if it was the people from the palace or the Shin family, Father had arranged for the secret guards here to protect my safety. But when I asked them, they all said that no one entered the side hall. They talked to Murong Yun. In the past, this sentence, Shin Yueji did not say it out, but Lu Qingru still knew what she wanted to say. Since she had already said it to this point, she felt that there was no need to hide it at all. That's right, it's me. More than a month after you passed away, I had already found out about Murong Yun and Qianhe's affair from back then. Qianhe is a member of the Jianghu. He is famous in the Jianghu. There is no one in the Jianghu who doesn't know of his existence. You also know that I have made friends with a group of people in the Jianghu. They also have a lot of prestige in the Jianghu. As long as I want to inquire, I can find out what happened in a few days. After you died, I was disheartened. I only wanted to avenge you, to take revenge on Feng Juqing, to take revenge on the Gu clan. After I had avenged you, I would leave with you and accompany you. Qin. She held Shun Yueji's hand nervously. Do you regret it? Are you blaming me? You love Morong Yun, don't you? Because of her repentance, because she knows the truth of what happened in the past, because you also know the reason why she treated you like that. Now, in her heart, she must be regretting how she treated you. Chapter 595. She's only left with repentance and remorse. She wants to make up for the abuse and torture she had suffered. Qin, in the past, what you wanted the most was her love. She touched your head lovingly and praised you. She held you in her arms and gently called you Qin. But, Qin, I really can't forget. I can't forget the harm she had done to you. You were so kind. I know that in your heart, you must have forgiven her long ago. You, Rower, you don't have to feel guilty. Shun Yueji sighed. I don't have any feelings for her now. Whether it's Morong Yun or Gu Yueqin's mother, I am Shin Yueji now. My identity is the eldest daughter of the Shin family and the apple of General Shun's eye. I only have this identity. The previous Gu Yueqin is already dead. Do you understand? No matter what Morong Yun does, repent, die, or anything else, it has nothing to do with me. I won't feel sorry for her. I won't regret it. I won't even acknowledge my identity as her daughter. Really? Lu Qingru looked at her in disbelief. She really thought that her Qin came to question her. At that time, she was really afraid. She was afraid that if Qin knew about this, there would be a gap in their hearts. She was even more afraid. It wasn't easy for her to have her again. If their relationship worsened because of this, she would be better off dead. That was why she admitted it so quickly. But she didn't expect that Shun Yueji would answer her in this way. Her words didn't seem to blame her at all. Instead, it was on her side. She felt warm in her heart and smiled. Qin, do you know North Sea? North Sea? The name Dark North made her subconsciously think of Imo Wushang. He should be on his way now. She didn't know if there would be any danger on his way back. She realized that she really wasn't worried about this man at all. Even after he had left for so long, she only thought of him now. If Lu Qingru hadn't mentioned Dark North, she reckoned that she wouldn't have thought of him for a long time. Why did you mention North Sea out of nowhere? A thought flashed across her mind. It was the words that Hong Fui had said to her. The masked woman who was wandering around the Huayang Palace was a member of the Dark North Shiming cult. He had said that Lu Qingru's identity was not simple, so he had asked her to be on guard against her. At first, she did not think much of it. A person who could sacrifice to such an extent for her, she would not suspect her no matter what. If she really wanted something from him, she wouldn't. Thinking of this, she smiled. When I returned to the General's mansion, Father seemed to have mentioned Dark North to me. General's mansion? Shin he? Yeah. Shin Yueji smiled. Seeing the smile on her face, Lu Qingru didn't know why, but she felt that it was an eyesore. Qin, are Shin he and the others very good to you? Of course it's very good. They made me feel what it means to be a parent. They give their best to their children, and they don't want me to suffer the slightest bit. In front of them, power and benefits are nothing compared to me, their daughter. Rower, this is also the reason why I am so indifferent to Morong Yun, because I have parents who love me. As long as I am alive, I will never let anything happen to them. In the future, I will take care of them for the rest of my life and treat them as my own parents. Chapter 596. Rower, Lu Qingru couldn't stand it anymore. No matter how well they treat you, you have to remember that you are not their biological daughter. She didn't understand why her mood changed so quickly. Just now, she was talking to her with a gentle smile, but now, her eyes were frozen, and even the smile on her face was gone. But Lu Qingru didn't realize it. You have to remember, their daughter is Shun Yueji, but you are not. One day, they will know that you are Gu Yueqin and not Shin Yueji. And you happen to be a member of the Gu family. The Gu family and the Shin family have been enemies for many years. Do you think they will still treat you sincerely? I'm afraid that they can't wait to get rid of you. Rower, what's wrong? Facing Shin Yueji's words, Lu Qingru also knew that her words were too heavy. She reacted and smiled with her pale face. I'm sorry, Qin. I might have been too emotional. The scene of the Gu family treating you like that is still vivid in my mind. I was just too worried about you. If the Gu family also? After listening to her explanation, Shun Yueji knew that her death had a great impact on her. Thinking about the rest of her life, it wasn't that there was no one who treated her sincerely. She patted Lu Qingruo's hand. Don't worry, I know what I am doing. No matter how they treat me in the future, even if they know my identity, at least, during the time I was Shen Yueji, they treated me sincerely. The real Shen Yueji is already dead, and now I am the one who replaced her. This is also what I owe them. Qin now, the Shen family's position in your heart is far higher than Murong Yun's, right? Ro, how can they be replaced by Murong Yun in my heart? Lu Qingru heard this and laughed at herself, restraining the hatred in her eyes. When she said that she didn't care about Murong Yun and the Gu family, she didn't know how happy she was, because this way, she belonged to her alone. But she didn't think that without Murong Yun, there was still the Shen family. She only spent a few days with the Shen family, but in her heart, the Shen family's position was far higher than Murong Yun's. For a moment, she felt that she had been thoroughly ridiculed. There would always be so many people appearing. There would always be so many people coming to snatch her Qingzhi. Rower, what's wrong? Why was his face so pale? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? She probably noticed that Lu Qingruo's expression wasn't quite right, especially her face, which was frighteningly pale, like a piece of paper. Shen Yueji could not help but call out worriedly. Lu Qingru grabbed her hand and called out, Xiner, will you hate me? What's wrong? Why are you asking all of a sudden? I mean, if one day I do something that makes you unhappy, or even makes you angry, will you hate me? Will you never forgive me? That depends on what it is. You've done so much for me. If I don't forgive you just because you made me unhappy and angered me, then wouldn't I be too inhumane? Shen Yueji comforted her. Rower, it's been so long. We've been friends for so many years. I know what kind of person you are. If it wasn't necessary, you would never hurt me. Chapter 597. Yes, Qin is right. If I have no other choice, she smiled. Even if I have no other choice, even if I am forced to do it, I still won't bear to hurt my Qin. When Shuangxi arrived, she saw that her concubine had already eaten in Huayang Palace. The corner of her mouth twitched as she looked at the two of them, who were as close as old friends who hadn't seen each other for decades. Didn't Lu Qingru have a close relationship with the late empress? For the sake of the late empress, he could even disregard his own family. Moreover, he did not treat anyone else well except the late empress. Why did he treat her consort with such a strange attitude after such a short period of time? It was so strange that she didn't know when Lu Qingru and her concubine's relationship had become so good and intimate. Concubine, I've done what you asked me to do. I've also found the maidservant. If I'm not mistaken, His Majesty should have received the news by now. And Shen Yueji took a bite of the pastry. After listening to Shuangxi's words, she lightly responded. Lu Qingru looked at her in confusion. What did the Empress do? Nothing much. Murong Yun's matter is hard for her to accept. The discussions and sneers about her in the harem are rising one after another. She can't vent her anger, so she started with the servants of Xianghe Palace. Yes, concubine Ro, you may not know, but the servants of Xianghe Palace have been tortured beyond recognition. Some are dead, some are crippled. It's really tragic. Oh, it seemed to be within her expectations, but at the same time, it seemed to be beyond her expectations. Lu Qingruo's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. This Gu Yuan, whenever she encounters something, she will either smash things or vent her anger on others. Now that Murong Yun knows the truth, she can't wait for her daughter to die. The Gu family is in a mess. In order to coax his daughter, Gu Wei doesn't even care about the court affairs. Is she still digging her own grave? Do you need my help again? I'm afraid that Rower will play Murong Yun to death with too much force. Speaking of which, I still want her to survive and continue to be her empress. I want her to collapse in the position of empress. If she wants to get down, she can't get down. However, Yu Ying, who is by the empress's side, is a thorny problem. On the way here, she heard from the secret guard that Yu Ying had returned to Auspicious Harmony Palace. His purpose for returning to Xianghe Palace was obvious. It must be to return to Gu Yuan's side. Even if he knew the truth about Gu Yueqin being his savior, he wouldn't feel anything for her. Gu Yuan, on the other hand, was the master he had accompanied for so many years. From the initial misunderstanding to the many years of companionship, his fondness for Gu Yuan was not unworthy of mention. I know the man Jill is talking about. Don't worry, leave it to me. I can get rid of him for you. Yu Ying's martial arts are extremely strong. Even those hidden guards who father had arranged to protect my hidden guards by my side might not be able to gain any advantage in his hands. Rower, have you forgotten what you promised me before? She subconsciously made guesses about the bad things. Lu Qingru naturally knew what she was worried about. Don't worry, Ji-er. Since I've promised you, I will never get involved with those people of the pugilistic world. Chapter 598. All these years, I've kept a low profile and made a lot of friends. Don't worry, there's no interest between us. If I ask them to help me, they won't refuse. The empress of a country came to the harem and abused her private punishment. She cruelly punished the servants, broke their arms, destroyed their limbs, and was extremely cruel. Soon, Gu Yuan insulted the empress's magnanimity and kindness. The news of her wantonly torturing the servants in the harem spread everywhere in the harem. The most anxious person was Gu Wei of the prime minister's residence. When Gu Wei learned of this news, Murong Yun had already locked herself up for a day and a night in a desperate attempt to survive. Rather than saying that he locked Murong Yun in, it would be better to say that during the period of time when Murong Yun was locked in, from the madness at the beginning to the quietness at the end, there was no movement at all, just like a dead person. When the servant girls brought the food, they shouted and shouted from the outside, but the people inside did not respond at all. In the end, they had no choice but to call Gu Wei over because they were worried that something might happen to Murong Yun. At this moment, Gu Wei stood outside the door and looked at the locked door. He ordered someone to open the lock and then pushed the door in. When the door couldn't be pushed, he knew that Murong Yun was locked inside. For a moment, he was angry and distressed. How many times had he swallowed his anger? How many times had he indulged her? Wasn't he good enough for her? He was so sincere to her that he dug out his own heart for her to see. Yuan, after so many years, you and I already have 3 children. Ask yourself honestly, am I not good enough for you? No matter what you want, I will find a way to give it to you. Tell me, how can I not be as good as that dead man? I admit that I lied to you, but that's because I love you too much. If I didn't love you, why would I lie to you for so long? For so many years, you have another man in your heart and continue to live with a dying man. Do you know how much my heart hurts when I look at you and think of that man every day? But I can't. I know that you love her. I've already forced you to stay by my side. I can't deprive you of this last bit of right. Yuan, I know that I lied to you. I lied to you for so many years. I lied to you about what happened back then. I lied to you about Qin Er's identity. I admit that I was selfish. Even if you hate me and will never forgive me, Yuan, all of this is because I love you too much. Yuan, did you hear that? I love you. I love you. Gu Wei could not help but shed tears. He really liked this woman. From the first time he saw her, he fell in love with her. At that time, the Murong family had not yet fallen. She was the eldest daughter of the Murong family. The name of Murong Yun was well known throughout the capital. Whether it was her beauty or her talent, he still remembered the first time he saw her. The young masters and young mistresses of the capital had arranged to go on a lake trip. At that time, she was sitting in the cabin, dressed in white and beautiful, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. With just one look, he believed that she had charmed countless men, and he was not the first. Unfortunately, at that time, her heart had already belonged to someone else. That man was a man of Jianghu. 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 Chapter 599. They fought and killed every day and treated the four corners of the world as their home. How could they compare to young masters from aristocratic families like them? She lived a life of luxury and wrote poems. At that time, he only needed to ask the people around him to know who she was. Only then did he know that she was the famous young lady of the Morong family, Morong Yun. In the past, he had only heard of her name. He had also heard that there were many young talents in the capital who fought with each other for the chance to catch her eye. At first, he didn't think much of it. After all, she was just a woman. Young masters of aristocratic families like them could get any beauty they wanted. In the past, they were the ones who picked the beauties, and the beauties threw themselves at them. How could they fight to the point of bleeding for a woman? He sneered at this. No matter how beautiful a beauty was, she was just a bag of skin. He believed that he was not the kind of man who could not move his feet because of a beauty and was willing to give up. A man should build a career and have his own ambitions. He should not be so useless because of a woman. Later, it wasn't until later that he caught a glimpse of the legendary eldest daughter of the Morong family. She was indeed very beautiful. In this world, there were very few women who could compare to her. He was surprised that there was a woman in this world who could make him fall in love with a single glance. He couldn't deny that he was really moved. His line of sight followed her every move. She was sitting on the cabin. It was a very, very small ship. It was not as luxurious as the big ships they had. There was a man sitting inside. He was dressed in black and held a sword in his hand. The man's face was cold but handsome. He saw that the arrogant woman who looked down on the capital was teasing the cold man with the sword. She smiled mischievously like a 7- or 8-year-old girl. The black-clothed man did not move at all. In the end, the girl was a little dispirited. She pouted and took the initiative to hug his arm. "Ahi, why don't you smile? Why are you like an ice cube all day? You're so cold that I'm almost frozen to death. Do you know? Every time I sneak out to see you, I wear a few sets of clothes." He didn't know if the girl was too mischievous or if she said these words seriously, but she didn't make the cold man in front of her laugh. Instead, she made him laugh. Gu Wei could still remember how he could not help but laugh when he looked at Morong Yun, this elegant and refined woman. His laughter attracted his friend's attention. His friend nudged his elbow. "Brother Gu, have you taken a fancy to her? Let me tell you, the eldest miss of the Morong family is famous for her beauty. In this world, there are countless men who have taken a fancy to her. To tell you the truth, even I am no exception. But unfortunately, the eldest miss of the Morong family already has someone else in her heart. Do you see that man in black? This is the man she likes. You see, if it was any other man, he would have been so happy that he couldn't help but hug this beauty. But this Chinha, he's as cold as a block of ice. He's in the arms of the Morong family's eldest miss, and he doesn't move an inch. He's like Lu Xiaohui." He still remembered asking, "This Chinha, what is his identity?" "Oh, him? He's just an assassin in the Jianghu. You know, these Jianghu people fight and kill all day long. They call the world their home and don't have a place to stay." Chapter 600. Every time, he takes orders. Whoever gives him the most money, he will take the order and live off of it. I don't know what's so good about this Qianhe that Miss Morong would fall for him. An assassin? He smiled disapprovingly. His beautiful lips curled into a sarcastic smile. What's so good about being an assassin? He lives on the edge of a knife. Maybe his enemy is more powerful than him, and he will lose his life there. That's right. Who said it wasn't? I don't know what eldest Miss Morong is thinking. You say that there are so many young and handsome men in the capital. For her sake, any one of them would not take a concubine and would only be willing to marry her. Such a great honor had never been bestowed in any other place. But this Miss Morong has fallen for an assassin. Sigh. How did Miss Morong meet this man? About that? I don't know. It seems that Qianhe was being chased and was seriously injured. He hid in Miss Morong's room and threatened her with a sword. But who would have known that the Morong clan eldest lady was not like other women who were so frightened that their faces turned pale and they screamed. Instead, her expression did not change. She pushed away the sword that was pressed against the man's neck and bandaged his wound. Other people save the damsel in distress, but when it comes to Miss Morong, it becomes a damsel in distress. Don't you think it's strange? Later on, the man said a lot more, but Gue couldn't bear to listen to any of it. Instead, he waved his fan and smiled as he made a bet with him. Brother Chen, do you believe that in less than 3 days, I will be able to woo the Morong family's eldest daughter? He could still remember the way the man looked at him. The man looked at him up and down and suddenly laughed. Your brother Gu is famous in the capital. If you dare to say that you are the best, no one would dare to say that they are second. But, do you think you can win Miss Morong's heart in 3 days? I'm afraid it won't be easy. All the women in the world are infatuated with you, Brother Gu. Other than Miss Morong, I am absolutely willing to believe that no one can escape from your clutches. If you want to get your hands on this Miss Gu, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult. Gue didn't take his joke to heart at all. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, "A challenging woman is interesting, isn't it? If it had been so easy to woo the eldest miss of the Morong family, she would not have been surrounded by so many talented youths in the capital. Even women are fighting to imitate her. So how bad can she be?" He had been alone for more than 20 years. In these 20 years, it wasn't that there wasn't a woman who could make him look up to her. However, it was just a glance, and he didn't plan to continue to get this woman to accompany him. Compared to power and influence, women were not worth mentioning in the slightest. Everyone in the world loved beauties, but he loved power. If a man didn't even have power, what was the use of beauties? It was just a decoration. But with Morong Yun's appearance, perhaps from the moment he saw her, he felt that he had fallen. Suddenly, he thought, what's so good about power? It would be better to have someone he liked by his side, someone who could accompany him, someone who could warm him up. That was what he wanted. On the first day, from the moment he saw her, he had pestered her. Chapter 601. She was accompanied by her maidservant as they took a shortcut home. Since they had snuck out, the way she and the little servant girl sneaked up to him like thieves made him, who was hiding in the dark, more or less amused. A stunning beauty like Morong Yun would be missed wherever she went. There were even some who were not afraid of death. In order to flirt with her, they would even throw away their lives. He was glad that he had chosen to follow her today. Otherwise, he would not have found out that there was a wretched man who had designs on her. That was the first time they had met. She thanked him in a soft voice with a hint of arrogance. She was different from those gentle and obedient women. In his heart, he liked her even more. Gu Wei's heart was filled with sweetness as he recalled the past. It was as if he had smeared honey on it. Yuner, do you know? Ever since I spoke to you that day, all I could think about was you. In the past, I hated beauty. I always thought that beauty would ruin a man's great career. But ever since I met you, I no longer thought that way. If I can have your company for the rest of my life, so what if I ruin my great career? So what if I am from an ordinary family? For you, I am willing to do anything. From the first time I saw you, I fell deeply in love with you. I swore that I would treat you well for the rest of my life. But that man, my eyes have been chasing after you, but your eyes have always been on that man. You have never looked me in the eye. Yuan, do you know how much my heart hurts? My pain isn't because my love for you can't be reciprocated, but because you like that man so much and treat him so well. For him, you tried to please him and put down your arrogance. You personally cooked for him and did so many things for him, but he was always cold to you and didn't accept your goodwill. He didn't accept everything about you. I feel unreconciled for you. I feel sorry for you. He placed his hand on the door. You are the woman I swore to protect and love for the rest of my life. How can I watch you become so despicable because of him? Even if you turn a blind eye to my goodwill, I firmly believe that one day, you will accept my kindness and my fondness for you. I'm sincere to you. Yuner, do you still remember? It rained in the capital for 3 consecutive days. You didn't come out for 3 days. On the first day after the rain, the sky cleared up. In the end, when you came out, the first person you saw was me. This is fate between us, you know? Even God thinks we're right for each other. Although I don't know why you like that man, I know that you're not fated to be with him. Sooner or later, you will be Gu Wei's wife. That's why I'm willing to wait. Even if I have to wait until the seas dry up and the rocks crumble, even if I have to wait for an eternity, I believe that there will be a day when the sky will clear up after the rain. Yoon-er. His big hand was still pounding on the door. Be good, okay? Listen to me and let me in. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Don't punish yourself like this, you know? The more you treat yourself like this, the more my heart hurts. For so many years, my feelings for you have never changed. How can I bear to see you torture yourself like this? Yoon-er, listen to my advice. I know you hate me. You can do whatever you want of me, even if you hit me or scold me. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Provoking Body Claw Bookhouse for free. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.